Hey guys, we are back, and this is really starting to look pretty killer. I'm almost tempted to not go dark with the grabber orange on the bottom of these forks, just because this transition back to the silver looks so cool. And you can see exactly where that happened, where I sprayed the pearl orange, and the overspray from the pearl orange tinted the top of this fork, and now just that mixture of the orange and yellow together really looks very cool, almost chrome-like. I'm going to put the sunlight on it, maybe you guys can see. I'm not sure how well it's going to translate onto the camera, but that seamless gradation of color up to the orange looks really killer all the way down. It's nice and bright on the tube here down to the bottom to the yellow. So what I'm going to do is let this dry up while I think about if I'm going to actually spray grabber orange over this, because I really like how it looks. I do want it a little bit darker though. I have one other trick up my sleeve, and that's going to be to do a little bit more sparkle. I'm going to use our Hot Rod Sparkle Gold and put a little bit over the front of this. So what that's going to do is just give a little more glitter, dazzle effect, but because it's gold, it keys well with the orange. And when I go over this with orange candy, it is just going to richen that and deepen it right up. You could also do our Hot Rod Sparkle Red if you want a little darker. But I think the gold looks really good. It keys very well with yellows and oranges. And once I start spraying our candy over that, it's really just going to have this crazy effect on it. So it'll have just a little bit of concentration in the front area. I don't want to go gold over the whole thing. I kind of want to just keep it in this front area and down on these forks. But again, in between coats of everything, I'm really letting this dry. You can see this is still a little bit wet, so really let that dry up good. You don't want to start layering material and material, because this is going to take forever to dry, and that's not a good thing. You start building thicknesses that you don't need to have. So we're going to let that dry up. I think I'm going to do a little bit of the gold over that, and we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to start spraying candy. So I will see you guys in a little bit. Okay guys, we are back. I let that orange dry up, and I went ahead and I put another coat of the Hot Rod Sparkle Gold over just the front of this, and I don't know, it looks okay on camera, but when you see this in person, man, it's going to be awesome. So really steps it up another notch in terms of that glitter factor, and like I said, I have the mentality more is better. So we're going to let this dry, and we're going to come back and spray our candy. So now I just wanted to touch real quick, because I didn't get this on film. It's basically the same way I sprayed the Hot Rod Sparkle White. So it's Hot Rod Sparkle Gold. I mixed it with a little bit of 40-50, same thing. It was 3 to 1, so 3 parts gold to 1 part 40-50, about 10% reduction. I sprayed it the same way through my 80. The only thing what I did was I just closed up my fan a little bit, again, because I kind of wanted to keep it concentrated. I kind of just let it fall, because it is flake, fall down on the legs of the fork here, but I kind of concentrated more on these top edges and really on this head tube, and just a little back on the tube here. Whatever kind of just fell in terms of overspray on the back is fine, because we're going to do candy over the top of that as well. But I really didn't spray this whole frame. I just focused it on the front here. And once I start spraying the orange candy, which I am going to do, I think it's going to look really cool on the front here, it's going to look killer. So we're going to let this really dry up good, probably about an hour, and then we'll come back and start spraying our candy. So I will see you guys in a little bit. Okay guys, welcome back. Our base coat is completely dry, and like I said, we waited about an hour, and that kind of thing is really critical, only because essentially the way I look at it is we are done spraying our base coat, right? So all these colors were our base coat. I kind of waited about 10 minutes between the transitions of colors. Again, this is a small project, so we're not really bombing a lot of product on there, nor should you ever do that. But you really want to make sure before you go to the next step, which is kind of like when we're spraying this candy now, it's kind of like a mid coat, right? So we're going to kind of end up spraying material over the whole frame, all these parts. So the last thing you want to do is be on that cusp of re-wetting some of the product, because then it's just going to cause problems down the road, and it's going to kind of make you think that it's dry, and it might not be totally dry, and then you go to clear coat, and then you could cause some issues. So it's really critical just to make sure before you go to the next step. Like we recommend, if I was going to clear coat this, waiting at least an hour. So I'm kind of looking at the clear coat aspect of this and spraying my candy because it is mixed in with one of our clear coats, our 4050. That's the carrier, the vehicle that gets the candy to the project, as if I was going to clear coat this. So waiting an hour, it's not going to hurt you. There are no time windows with this product, so waiting longer is going to be more beneficial to really make sure everything, all the resins really have a time to dehydrate and lock up and make sure. Now, again, that's kind of a relative thing. We have a controlled environment. We're spraying about 72 degrees, and we're like 55, 50, up to 60% humidity. That's really ideal. So again, if you're spraying open air, you don't have a lot of air movement, it's colder. It's not so much the temperature as much as it is the humidity, that dew point, you know, how much moisture-laden air you're moving. So if you're spraying and it's wet out or it's a moisture-laden environment, what you're doing is the vehicle, right, the solvent in this is water. So if you're trying to evacuate the water, we're trying to dehydrate that paint in order for it to dry. If you have water in the environment around you, it's going to take a lot longer for this product to dry. So you kind of want to be mindful of that. So that's the end of that. Now it's time for the fun with the candy. So we are ready to spray candy. So we're going to start with our grabber orange. We did the orange in the front of the bike. And I want to tone this down. I really want to bring out that flake and really make this transition nice and rich and vibrant into that pearl orange. And then we'll go from here, we'll go with our lemon yellow off the back of the frame and into this upper. So basically these two are going to kind of marry each other right in here. And that's where that transition is going to be. So I mix my candy 6-to-1. And the only thing is the 6 is the 40-50. So the 40-50 is that carrier for the dye. The candy is like a dye. It needs some body. So spraying it that way and 6-to-1, I feel for across the board for most of our candies is a solid number to start at. Now, if you're doing something with airbrushing or something smaller or more detail work, you can go more concentrated. So less 40-50 to more candy. That would be totally fine. But doing something like this where you're trying to have a nice seamless fade transition of color and put it on even, it's not necessarily bad having a weaker candy and starting weaker and then gradually increasing that concentration as you start to get coverage. So it's key to make sure that first coat goes on nice and even, no blotch, no kind of dry or stipply look to it. And that's the thing is if you spray this candy and it is too wet or too thin, it'll kind of have like a water droplet effect. It'll kind of look washed out. So 6-to-1, I think, is it's my ideal sweet spot. A lot of times, at that ratio with a larger gun, you don't have to reduce it at all because the dye, the Candy 2.0, is so thin on its own that you don't need reduction. So if you do have to reduce, maybe 5%. You know, smaller gun, I'm using an LPH 80. I put literally a splash of reducer in there, and I mixed about 3 ounces of candy, so literally like a splash of 4011 just for flow. Probably didn't even need it. I try not to, especially when I'm doing it with the candies and something smaller like this, because you don't want a very, very wet film bill because it's going to skate out. And we call that skating out, where it'll kind of spray on here and almost look like you're spraying over a waxed surface. It'll have these little droplets. So those are some tips. Again, this is totally dry. I'm going to spin this around so it's facing the plenum, the exhaust, and I'm going to spray my grabber orange. You guys can see what that looks like. Hey guys, welcome back. We are ready to spray the candy. This is the grabber orange, and you guys are going to see what this looks like. Even at 6-to-1, it's pretty rich in the concentration because this is a pretty vivid color. So, like I said, I'm going to try to focus my overspray off to the front of this. I'm going to darken this front area and just kind of gradually let it fade right about here. This is kind of my target area to try to keep my overspray going this way. So there's really no rhyme or reason to the way I'm spraying. I'm just trying to make this even. There's a lot of little areas and reveals and nooks and crannies in here where it's going to be critical. If I double pass, it's going to get darker. So I kind of just want to be very methodical in the way I spray and just kind of keeping a nice medium wet overlap. And I'm just going to keep working until I'm happy with how the color looks. So this is the fun part. This is you guys are going to see this is cool. So this is coat number 1. Okay guys, we are back, and I went ahead and did 2 more coats over the top of that first coat. And I just wanted to kind of show you guys what it is that I'm talking about when we're talking about spraying medium wet on the candy. The key to having that turn out smooth and nice and even is being able to put on a medium wet coat, not too dry. If it's dry, you're going to see just that stipple effect and a lot of dry, grainy overspray. And what'll happen is we call that stacking. It'll just consistently get worse and worse and worse the more you try to make that go away with spraying drier on the top. So that's why the 40-50 is extremely important when spraying the candies, because it allows you to put on a nice medium wet coat. And I don't mean like painting the floor wet, you know, like we're not trying to spray this like super wet coat of clear, but just wet enough that your overlaps melt into each other and allow that overspray to kind of melt in instead of stand up. So I don't know how well, again, this is going to translate on film, but this is looking pretty awesome. So that was at 6-1. I'm going to come in and darken up this lower portion of the fork a little bit. I'd like to kind of just maybe fade it from the top to bottom. I think it looks kind of cool like that. We'll see. And I'm just going to wash over the back portion of this orange just a little bit. Again, kind of meeting it right here, letting it fade out, and then I'll come back with my lemon yellow, and I will start at the back and work my way into this, and that's really going to give it a very cool kind of fade and seamless color fade from end to end. So we're going to let that dry up a little bit. I'm going to come back in, do a little bit more blending right here, and we'll see you guys when I'm ready to spray the yellow. Okay guys, we are back one more time, and I have my grabber orange candy. Is all totally dry. Like I said, I went back and I actually bumped up the concentration another 5%, just to kind of fade the front of the head tube here and the lower parts of the forks. Probably doesn't really show it right now on camera, but it is going to be just a little bit darker, a little bit richer in color, just in the front and the bottom. So again, that's another thing you can do in terms of the concentration of candy. If you work lighter to darker, you can always just richen up that mixture and kind of use it as a tint or a shadow color, as well as you know, change that gradation. So this is the last step, and this is the lemon yellow. This is candy lemon yellow. And I know I said that 6-1, that's like my guideline for all the colors. This is very weak because it is such a bright color. So this is the only one, the candy, the lemon yellow, that I don't mind saying going half that. You can go 3-1 or 4-1. So for this application, I went 4-1. Again, bigger spray gun. I still want to be able to put on a nice medium wet coat and not have that dry spray. So if it's too concentrated, it's going to look kind of funky. And if you have to spray it really dry, then it's also going to give you an undesired effect in terms of that texture. So what I'm going to do on this one is spray this whole frame. And that's kind of the beauty part of working from the light to dark and dark to light. This is the last color going on. This is just going to kind of tint that orange. It's not strong enough to really change that effect, that color. And actually what it's going to do in this particular instance, it's actually going to help kind of bleed all of them together to help with that transition. A lot of times you don't want your candies to bleed, but in this particular instance, because of what we're trying to do, this is a perfect opportunity to utilize that tendency to bleed. So what it'll do is kind of re-wet the orange here and kind of melt in and kind of make those two go together, kind of marry together in like a seamless transition. So it's going to look really cool. So I'll probably do 2 coats over the whole bike, and I'll just darken up the back just so I don't have that green silver kind of look. It'll be nice and yellow. And then we're going to let this really dry up good, probably about another hour or 2. Let it really set up, and then we're going to come back and clear it. So this is the last coat. You guys can see what the yellow does. Okay guys, we are back, and that completes this project. While we were gone, I went ahead and I put 2 coats of our catalyzed clear on here, the 2K. Like I said, I mentioned you guys, this is what we use here. Again, it's because I'm in a booth and I do have the ability, I have the spray guns here, I have the setup. But if you don't have spray guns or something like that, or you're not comfortable spraying 2K clear, you can spray, like I mentioned, the product from Spray Max. And it is a fantastic product. You're going to get the same results. It dries nice and hard, and it's sandable and buffable. It works perfectly. So for this, again, I used the 550, and that's what we like to use. So just a quick recap of something super simple to do, and I think that speaks for itself in terms of what we have for a finished product here. It's going to be really cool. Silver sealer for our ground coat, 2 coats that was covered perfectly, a little bit of fading with our iridescent yellow and our pearl orange, and a little bit of candy fade from the lemon yellow candy and our grabber orange mixed with our 40-50 clear, and that is exactly how we wanted this to come out and what it looks like, and I think, again, it speaks for itself. So thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you guys next time.